Weekend is here, and so is championship weekend in Formula One. So as this video title says, it's pretty self-explanatory, but if you're someone who's followed me through NASCAR and stuff, you know where this is going, but it's basically what it says. We're going to talk about why Max Verstappen will win the 2021 Formula One World Championship, and it's not like there's a few races left. It's not like, it's the beginning of the season, they got time to figure this out. No. One race remains. Only one. What's the points differential? Oh, maybe there's some clinching scenarios. It's simply who finishes higher. Max Verstappen and his title rival Lewis Hamilton are tied in points heading into the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And we're going to talk about Max Verstappen today. Tomorrow we will look at Lewis Hamilton. And then Saturday we will look at the race itself. And I will give my predictions for who I think is going to win the race or win the championship. But yes, it's pretty simple. Whoever finishes higher between Verstappen and Hamilton is your 2021 World Drivers' Champion. Now, there's a scenario where neither of them score points. The tiebreaker will go to Verstappen, all right? But yes, let's look back at Max Verstappen's 2021 season thus far. 9 wins coming at Imola, Monaco, France. He swept the Austria races, winning both of them. Belgium in the rain race, whatever you want to call that. He won his home Grand Prix at the Netherlands. He won at the United States. And he won at Mexico. I think that's all. I might have missed one. I hope I didn't. But that is Max Verstappen's 2021 victories. The most wins he has had in a single season. I think he only has 19-20 career wins overall. So this has been a personal record-breaking year for himself. 17 podiums in 21 starts. And every single one of his podiums, he has finished first or second. He has 0 third-place finishes this year. And the 4 races that he has not been on the podium or finished 1-2, we have a crash DNF at Azerbaijan due to a tire, a crash DNF at Silverstone due to contact with Lewis Hamilton, a ton of damage at Hungary, and he finished 9th or 10th, so, just in the points. So, a damaged race car still was able to get points. And Monza, he crashed out there with Lewis Hamilton. So, whenever he is not crashing or is getting crashed, he's on finishing first or second. Verstappen has been absolutely insane this year in terms of the consistency, in terms of the speed. Red Bull has given him a car that he can win a championship with. I mean, simple as that. He has been great this year. He has been the top driver, honestly. If we're honestly speaking, he's been the top guy this year. As I said, he has the most wins. He's got the most podiums. I think he's going for like an F1 record. If he gets a podium this weekend, he can have the most in a single season. Verstappen's just been really, 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 really good this year. Obviously, as I said, a personal best year for him. But, I mean, I think earlier in the year, I know that they have more races this year than they have in the past. But I think after his Mexico win, he broke the record with Senna's record for most wins in a single season with a Honda engine. So that's pretty impressive as well. But Verstappen has been absolutely great this year. It seemed like, almost unstoppable. But then, of course, there's Mercedes. And Mercedes, they have won everything in the turbo hybrid era. And, this is really Mercedes' first challenge since they become the dominant force since 2014. We saw Ferrari give them a bit of a challenge in, 2018 with Vettel. But, they couldn't get it done. They had their issues late in the season. But this has to be, correct me if I'm wrong, this has to be the first time that since they become the dominant force that someone has taken the title fight all the way down to the last race or to the final, what will be probably the final laps of the season. But yes, it's going to come down to Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and Red Bull versus Mercedes. These two teams, not just Mercedes, they've dominated the last 7-8 years, but before that, it was Red Bull from 2010 to 2013. So, Red Bull finally getting back to that kind of 2010 to 2013 championship contending era, and this is their this is a really good shot for them. They're still mathematically in it for the Constructors' Championship, though it's unlikely if we're being honest. I think they're 30 points behind on that. The Drivers' Championship is very much in reach. So let's look at Max Verstappen's finishes in his career at Abu Dhabi compared to Lewis Hamilton's finishes at Abu Dhabi in his career. Verstappen's first year in Formula One was 2015. He finished 16th in that race. In 2016, he finished 4th, of course. In that race, that was the last time Lewis Hamilton lost a championship to Lewis Hamilton's, at the time, teammate Nico Rosberg. Hamilton was trying to slow down Rosberg. So Verstappen, I guess he could have gotten a podium there, but he finishes 4th. That's regardless of this topic. He finished 5th in 2017. He got a podium, his first podium at Abu Dhabi in 2018 with a 3rd. 2019, he finished 2nd. And this one is quite important. In 2020, the most recent race we've had at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, Max Verstappen was your winner. Now, that was impressive. He got the pole. I think he led every lap of that race. He dominated that race. He won that race. Red Bull, great weekend last year there, but there have been some changes to this track. All right, we talked about it a couple weeks ago when we were previewing, I think it was Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and this, but we're going to look at it again at Abu Dhabi, the racetrack, the changes to this course, because they're kind of significant, and I think they play into the favor of Mercedes, but we will talk about that a bit. So here's the old map of the racetrack. As you can see, after turn 4, there's a little chicane kind of thing through 5 and 6, and then a long left-hander, not a long, but like a hairpin left-hander through 7, down a long straightaway, 8, 9, blah, blah, blah. Then you go down to turn 11, and it's kind of a quick left, right, left through 11, 12, and 13. Well, those have been changed. Now, looking at the Abu Dhabi track, after turn 4, it is just now a long left-hander. Then you go all the way down the straight, take that little chicane kind of thing. Then you go down a left, and then this one is a really long left-hander through turn 9, what is now turn 9, and then you go into sector 3, which is unchanged. So these are some pretty significant changes to the track that I think play into Mercedes' hands. Of course, Mercedes, that engine, that power that they have has been really showing these last few weeks at Brazil, at Qatar, at Saudi Arabia. It's been really showing that their speed, their fast-pacedness down straightaways and stuff, and the top speeds, that has played to their advantage. At Abu Dhabi, there are 2 really long straightaways that I think will likely play into Mercedes' hands, but you still got to think, even though those 2 things that changed are going to be more of an advantage to Mercedes because it makes the track quicker paced, you get rid of almost 2 chicanes, which slow down your pace, it slows down your the car, you got more slow corners, and this makes them faster straightaways or a faster turn. You got to think that's going to play into Mercedes' hands, but at the same time, everything else is basically the same. Turns 1 through 4 are almost exactly the same. Turns 10 through 16, they haven't been touched. So you've got to think that Verstappen can take advantage of that, especially that 3rd sector. I feel like that would play into Red Bull's hands a bit more just because it's a little bit of a slower, more turns, more slow down. I don't know what the technical word is, but you would have to think that that would play into Red Bull's favor. And and also just looking at Verstappen, Verstappen's hungry. I mean, he wants this thing. He's been elbows out. He's been wanting to win every single race he's been a part of. If Lewis Hamilton has to pass him for the win, Max Verstappen's going to make it the most difficult pass of Lewis Hamilton's career. Now, we have seen Verstappen with the past few weeks, especially because Mercedes has definitely had more speed than the Red Bull. We have seen Verstappen, I don't want to call them desperation moves, but it's almost like he knows how fast Mercedes is, and if he lets Lewis Hamilton by, that he's not going to get back to him. So it's like Verstappen trying to hold off Lewis Hamilton in these past few weeks at Saudi Arabia, at Brazil. It's almost like he's trying to push the car to its absolute limit, but he's pushed it over the limit. And we saw that at Brazil in the turn 4 incident. We saw that in qualifying at Jeddah on the final turn. We saw it a couple of times in turn 1 at Jeddah. So Verstappen, I don't think he's deliberately trying to push Lewis Hamilton off the racetrack or trying to wreck Lewis Hamilton, but he knows the Mercedes is faster, and he is pushing as hard as he possibly can, and it's just over the limit. And I think Verstappen will push to the absolute limit once again this weekend, but he cannot wreck Lewis Hamilton, and here's why. People have been talking about it all week. My Twitter feed has been Prost, Senna, Schumacher, Hill, Schumacher, Villeneuve, all weekend, or all week. That's all it's been. People are talking about, oh, here's what Verstappen's going to do. Once he gets the opportunity going into turn one, he doesn't need a brake pedal this week. I don't think Verstappen can get away with it. I really don't. Because if you look at the history, you go back and look at these incidents. 89 with Prost wrecked Senna, let's be honest here. And Senna went on, he drove, and he won the race. Well, then they disqualified him. So, that was touchy. That was a bunch of behind-the-scenes politics. We won't get into that. 90, Senna blatantly took out Prost. If you think otherwise, I don't know what you're looking at. And Senna went unpunished. He was given the world title. He had no issues. Oh, he had some issues. I think, over the offseason, they threatened to suspend him, and, some things happened. It was in the documentary. But, yeah, so that happened. And then with Schumacher's incidents, you look at 94, he wrecked Hill. He hit the wall, and he had some suspension problems. And so, he knew that if Hill doesn't finish, then he wins the championship. He turns into Hill, breaks Hill's suspension, no punishment there. But this one is why I am convinced that Verstappen could not get away with potentially intentionally wrecking his championship rival, and that is 1997. Jerez in Spain, I believe, the season finale, Schumacher and Jacques Villeneuve. I don't know what the point scenario was, but Villeneuve was passing Schumacher, and Schumacher literally just turned into his door trying to wreck him. It wasn't even close to making it look like an accident. I mean, it was, if you're a NASCAR fan, it was like Matt Kenseth, Joey Logano. That's how bad it looked. And Schumacher was disqualified from the World Championship, giving the title to Villeneuve. He would have gone on to win it anyways, but regardless, he won the world title, disqualifying Schumacher. And if Verstappen does the same thing, I think he'll be disqualified from the World Championship. That's why I think he cannot get away with potentially wrecking his opponent. Now, there are scenarios if they're going down a straight and, I don't know, Verstappen blows a tire, Hamilton blows a tire, or, Hamilton makes a mistake and makes contact with him, and Verstappen at this point just says, okay, screw it. If you're going to touch me, I'm going to make it look like I had something break and just wreck the crap out of you. I don't know, but, obviously I don't want to see it in that way. I don't think anyone wants to see it in that way, but we do have to talk about it. It's a real possibility, but I think these two are going to race to the absolute limit, but I do not think that they wreck each other. But as for, once again, back to just Verstappen and stuff and his Abu Dhabi finishes, I think that last year's race has to give them confidence. You look at historically at Abu Dhabi, it's really been a Mercedes track since 2014. Actually, no, I take that back. It has been a Mercedes track since 2014. They've won everything there since 2014 with the exception of last year with Rosberg, Hamilton, and Bottas. Last year, Verstappen, he went on pole and he dominated that race. That's got to give you some confidence that you were the first team since yourself in 2013 to beat Mercedes at this track. And, that's the first time Mercedes has lost since 2013 at that track. And Mercedes, their dominant era started in 2014. So they have owned that track since their dominant era started. And last year, after a dominant season from them, Verstappen and Red Bull beat them straight up, out-qualified them, out-raced them, and they won. And I think, in my opinion, that has to give a ton of confidence to Max Verstappen and Red Bull. Just from last year, I think seriously, I just think that's going to give them a lot of confidence going into this race. I don't know what you have to change, what you have to do with the cars, with the changes to the track, but hopefully it's a good race. But and then one last thing that I think I have to point out is the teammates. Earlier this week, Bottas made a comment. I can't remember the exact quote, but basically he said he's willing to do anything to help Lewis win the championship. He will have elbows out if he has to battle Verstappen. Verstappen, in my opinion, he's got to be on front row at worst. He cannot be behind Bottas at this race. Obviously, pole position would be preferred, but he cannot be starting third behind a Mercedes front row lockout because, to be honest with you, I wouldn't be shocked if Bottas wrecked him. I mean, this last race could get ugly, let's be honest, but the fact of the matter is Bottas, he's in a great car, and he's an underrated driver, and he's a terrific qualifier. We've seen it the last few weeks. He's qualified on two or three poles the past few weeks. He got the pole at Mexico. He got the pole at, I want to say, Brazil, I think. So he's had a couple of poles, and he's been qualifying really, really well. But Verstappen's teammate Perez, he has not been qualifying too well. I think Perez's last front row start, correct me if I'm wrong, was Imola, the second race of the season. So Perez is a good driver, don't get me wrong. He'll get you podiums. He's a he's great in the race, but his qualifying pace is it's just off. I mean, straight up, it's just off. He's a great driver, but it's off. So Verstappen's not going to really have that backup if he can't get Perez up there. Perez has to qualify in the top four to help Verstappen, in my opinion. But for Verstappen, qualifying is going to be extremely important. Obviously, the pole is preferred, but if you can't get the pole, if Lewis Hamilton's like freaking 10 seconds ahead of you, you have to beat Valtteri Bottas. You have to get on that front row. Give yourself a shot at passing Lewis Hamilton on that first lap. We've seen multiple instances this year where Verstappen has started second and he has passed Lewis Hamilton in the opening corners. We saw it in the sprint race at Silverstone. But also at the same time, if Verstappen gets poled, we've seen the same thing happen with Verstappen. Verstappen started at pole at the U.S. and Hamilton was leading by turn one. So it really could go either way, but I think for those two, the importance is going to be the front row. The Mercedes has been on point, so I expect Lewis to be on the front row, but Max in that Red Bull has to get on the front row. As for the race itself, I mean, I don't know what kind of race it's going to be. To be honest with you, I tried to watch this race last year. I think it was like 7 in the morning local time. I woke up, I watched like the first 10 laps, and I fell asleep. Woke up, and the race was over. So I watched the race highlights yesterday. It didn't seem like much happened, but it'll be interesting. I really hope they're evenly matched, and it straight up just comes down to drivers, their skill, their ability, what they can get out of the car. I hope it doesn't end ugly, but yes, that is my championship case for Max Verstappen. To quickly conclude, front row start is very, very important. He's going to need that front row. If strategy plays a factor, 2-stop versus 1-stop, we've seen that play out a couple times this year, France and Spain. But also, if something like the U.S. happens where you try to execute the undercut, that kind of thing, that could be interesting. I think that would be a really cool end to the season if we're being honest. A strategic battle, but also the drivers trying to manage the tires. That would be an epic end to the season. But yes, so back to my point, strategy could play a factor. Verstappen's got to be on the front row. No question, he's got to be on the front row. And then also, I think winning this race last year, even though there are some changes to this track that favor Mercedes, going to this track, you've got to feel confident that you're the most recent race winner, and it was not a fluke win. You guys dominated that race. You were on pole last race. So that's got to give you a ton of confidence at Red Bull and for Verstappen. And then also, you got the tiebreaker if something happens. If both of you finish outside the points, if you somehow find a way to tie in points, it's unlikely, but if it does happen, you got the tiebreaker. So you gotta feel confident there. And honestly, Max, you've been the best driver all year, if you ask me. Don't get me wrong, this is no diss or disrespect to Lewis Hamilton. He's one of the greatest drivers of all time, and he's had a terrific year himself, but Verstappen's been just better this year, in my opinion. And, he's got more wins, he's got more podiums, he's led more laps. He's just looked like the better driver, but he's got to be the best driver this weekend, and we will see how it goes. Tomorrow we will be talking about Lewis Hamilton and his championship chances. I'm looking forward to doing that one as well. I really enjoyed doing this, but I'm really excited for the race this weekend. I really, really am. Hopefully there's no shenanigans. Hopefully they can just race straight up, have a great title fight. But yeah, Woo Max Verstappen. If you have not heard it, the guys who made the Supermax song, they came out with a new one. Pit Stop Boys. Go look them up. They make awesome music for Supermax. So, yeah. Anyways, like, subscribe, share, all that stuff, and have a great rest of your day, evening, morning, wherever you are. And we will see you tomorrow for the Lewis Hamilton video.